Hello everybody, it's TannerFishies here, back again with a new Ninjago video here on the channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the worst nightmare of Ninjago fans, what exactly that might look like, and what event could cause this in the future. Now obviously the worst nightmare, if you will, for all Ninjago fans is pretty much up to each individual Ninjago fan. Every single Ninjago fan definitely has things about the show that they absolutely enjoy, but of course we all have our fears. We all have it in the back of our heads that something bad could happen at any moment. What exactly might that look like in the case of the Ninjago show? What could the show do that would in fact be a terrible nightmare for most Ninjago fans? We're going to be discussing a couple of scenarios in today's video that could be seen as the worst possible thing that could eventually happen to the Ninjago show, and like I said, this is all just a bunch of possibilities and what ifs. This is not a confirmation of anything, no confirmed information, no breaking news or anything like that. This is just a list of things that could happen that probably would not go over well with a lot of Ninjago fans. I have a list of 4 things here that we're going to be taking a look at, so let's begin. I'll be explaining my thoughts on them as we go through them, the first one of which being the ending without an ending. What if Ninjago ends, but it doesn't have a solid ending? This is something that myself and many other Ninjago fans are kind of dreading for the Ninjago series. Every single year that Ninjago gets renewed, and every single new season that comes out, we eventually get closer and closer to that inevitable end. Ninjago will end one day. It's not going to last forever. It will have a conclusion at some point. However, what that conclusion may or may not look like is going to be quite concerning for some Ninjago fans. There have been several examples of LEGO themes with solid stories that end with a whimper. The most famous one, in my opinion, is Bionicle. With Bionicle's original ending, it kind of ended with a whimper. It didn't go out with a bang. It went out in a very, very disappointing manner, and I don't want that to happen with Ninjago. A lot of people want Ninjago to have a solid ending, and the biggest fear for a lot of Ninjago fans is that when Ninjago does eventually end, it might not have a definitive ending. There have been several points throughout Ninjago's run so far where a definitive ending has been introduced, the most famous of which, and the most obvious of which, was all the way back in Season 2, after the final battle had concluded. That was originally intended to be the ending of the series, and honestly that's an okay ending for me. That was a very definitive wrap-up, and there was the idea of a conclusion in mind. Something similar almost happened with Hands of Time. There was an alternate ending written for Season 7, which would indeed see an ending for the Ninjago storyline. Those plans obviously fell through, as there had been more seasons following Hands of Time, but still, a solid Ninjago ending has been planned, of course, but I want there to be a definitive ending when the series eventually does reach that legitimate conclusion. We've had solid endings before, sure, but who knows what's coming in the future? Who knows when Ninjago will end, or when exactly that ending will be? Either way, myself and many other Ninjago fans would like there to be a solid conclusion. The Ninjago show should be able to recognize its ending and not just have a random ending cut in the middle of an actual story arc. Like, for example, imagine if the ending of Seabound was the definitive ending for the Ninjago series. I don't think that would go over well for a lot of Ninjago fans. If anything, we need a conclusion like what we saw with Season 2, where there was a definitive wrap-up, but room for more if the Ninjago series ever decided to continue. Kind of backing up that topic, let's discuss a continuation. What exactly would a continuation of Ninjago look like, and what could be so dreadful about it that would cause Ninjago fans a lot of pain? Well, in my opinion, we would get a very terrible reboot. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened. There have been several shows that have been canceled and rebooted with a lighter tone and a lot more of a goofy atmosphere, I suppose. I'm sure a lot of you guys could indeed point out specific examples for that, but imagine if Ninjago ended and then a few years down the line, they brought it back as some type of terrible reboot. Something like this could definitely be compared to Bionicle's reboot. We're talking a lot about Bionicle in today's video, but honestly, Bionicle went down a lot of paths that Ninjago definitely should try to avoid. Bionicle came back with a reboot, and while I personally enjoyed the rebooted sets, the show itself for Bionicle's reboot was definitely not all that great and not very memorable. It came back with a very weak reboot that got cancelled almost immediately after being introduced. For Ninjago, I don't want that to happen to that series. I feel like if Ninjago were to come back with a reboot, they should do it in a sort of continuation-like manner. I've seen people suggest that perhaps the Ninja's children could be the new focus of the show. That's been an idea that the Ninjago fandom has had for years now, but it's not a bad idea. If you wanted to do a continuation, you could totally do that, and it would also act as a soft reboot. The original cast members could still be there, of course, but the series itself would focus on a new generation. If Ninjago does decide to do a continuation animation after its inevitable conclusion, then I feel like they would go that route. What I don't want Ninjago to do, and what several other Ninjago fans don't want, is a very terrible reboot. I think a lot of us can agree that that's not going to be a very good idea, but whether or not that'll come in the future, we just have to wait and see. Obviously, something like this would happen after Ninjago's conclusion, which is obviously going to happen one day, but as to when that day will be, we just simply don't know right now. Something else that I could see happening is a change in the TV show. Ninjago has gone through several changes before that have been pretty much nightmares for a lot of Ninjago fans. For example, the switch in designs to adopt the Ninjago movie designs, starting with Sons of Garmadon, was definitely a controversial decision to say the least. In regards to animation, Ninjago switched animation studios starting with season 11, and that in and of itself caused a lot of controversy and caused a lot of Ninjago fans to leave. But what would be a step up from that? In my opinion, it would be a change of art style entirely. Season 11 also brought in the infamous anime art style, which was basically used for backstory episodes or just side stories that didn't really affect the main plot line. Several episodes of season 11 adopted this, and some other examples have been seen throughout the Ninjago show since season 11. But Ninjago has indeed kind of toned down that area of thinking. We have seen alternate art styles in various side stories like the Ninjago Legacy shorts, but the main series hasn't really been using that as of late. However, if Ninjago does decide to switch art styles to, let's say, a more anime-esque art style, I feel like that would cause a lot of uproar throughout the Ninjago community, especially on platforms such as Discord and Twitter, where anime in the Ninjago community is very much not welcome. But with that being said, I feel like with the actual art style of Ninjago, it has changed very much since the beginning. What we saw when Ninjago first began is not how the show looks in today's age. There's definitely been some changes. Whether or not you'll call those improvements is obviously up for interpretation. Regardless though, if Ninjago were to go full anime, full 2D, and create a new art style for the show, I know it would please some people, but the majority of the Ninjago fanbase would definitely find that to be some type of nightmare for sure. So a new art style is for sure something that would cause a lot of uproar within the Ninjago fandom. Speaking of changes done to the show, if Ninjago ever decides to change the tone of the series, that could indeed cause a lot of controversy and a lot of discussion. We've seen something like this happen before in Ninjago as well. Different seasons of course have different tones. Some seasons are a little bit darker than others. Some seasons take a little bit more of a lighter approach to things, especially in regards to the newer Ninjago seasons. There's been an emphasis on comedy, and if Ninjago were to switch over to a full-on comedy, I know it would not be some people's cup of tea. There have been new writers added to the Ninjago staff that could indeed be writing future episodes. These writers were brought in to make things a little bit more comedic, and it's been said multiple times that future Ninjago will have a little bit more of a comedy touch to it, which has been receiving all kinds of feedback, negative and positive. Regardless though, if Ninjago were to have a complete tonal shift, imagine that for a second. Ninjago would be rebooted into a comedic series. I don't think a lot of people would appreciate that. Ninjago has always had comedy in it, sure, we've seen comedic moments ever since the pilots, but to have Ninjago become a full-on comedy, it's gonna be a little bit of a shift in regards to what the fans would want to see. I know some people would absolutely enjoy a comedy-focused Ninjago story, but at the same time, I know myself and several other Ninjago fans would miss those moments of darkness and seriousness. Ninjago is a series that has adopted a lot of different tones over the course of its run, and if Ninjago were to completely shift into a comedic-esque series, I know it would appeal to some people, but to others it would seem like a missed opportunity and simply a shell of its former self. But regardless, I don't think any of these things are going to be happening in the future for Ninjago. If anything, I feel like Ninjago is most in danger of having an ending without an ending, not having a solid conclusion. LEGO could cancel Ninjago at any point in time, and as such the TV series would probably not exist anymore. So whatever season we're on could theoretically be just cut off from there, and Ninjago would not be given a definitive ending. However, I think Ninjago is very much commonplace in LEGO's arsenal right now. I don't think Ninjago is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. It's been said that Ninjago has several more years to come and several more stories to tell. So in regards to when Ninjago will end and if it'll have a solid conclusion, I think it will have a solid conclusion. I think the Ninjago staff will plan ahead and give us a solid last season to round out the story whenever that ending will indeed come. Like I said, there are several more years of Ninjago for us to experience, so we just have to sit and enjoy the ride until it eventually does come to a conclusion. But like I said, each of these possible scenarios are what I consider to be the worst nightmare for the Ninjago community, but leave some other examples down below in the comments. What could happen to the Ninjago series that would be a worst nightmare in your eyes? Leave all your thoughts down below in the comments, you guys. I'll look forward to reading what you guys come up with for today's topic. topic. With all that being said, that'll pretty much wrap it up for my thoughts here today, so thank you so much for checking out this video. Like I said, leave all your thoughts in the comments down below, and hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you did enjoy, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and check out the links down below in the description for my other forms of social media. As always, big shout out goes out to my Patreon supporters, including once again the marvelous Jan. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video once again. My name is TannerFishies, and with that I bid you farewell.